Hello. Happy Friday. How are you? I hope the answer is something like, I'm really good. Doesn't have to be exactly that, but I hope it's something like that. What's that, puppy? Are you excited about reading a book? Are you excited about reading a book today? Smells pretty good, right? Your tail just circling. Oh, you want a snack. You deserve one because you are a good puppy. Gotta get you some better snacks. These are probably pretty old. Look at this pup. Look at how excited he is. Whoa. Excuse me. Hello, Sharkies. Sorry about the sneezes to greet you. How's it going? Happy Friday. His attention is so... Thank you, BBAB. Laser point attention. How's everyone's week been? Thank you. Yep. Oh, you got it. You wanna come up for the last one? Come up. Come up. You wanna come up? Up. 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 You can do it. Up. Up. It's not worth it. Come on up. Ben. Come on. Oh, he left. It was so not worth it that he left. Well, you see how it is. I'm not sure why. He is so afraid of coming up on this chair. Come here. Ben. Up. 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 Nope. Runs away. Just leaves entirely. Which is funny because, like, he will come up on my lap if we are elsewhere, if we're anywhere else. If I'm sitting in another chair, especially if we're at the vet's office, he will jump up in my lap. But specifically if I am sitting in this chair at the computer here, he does not wanna. He's camera shy. Could be. Maybe it's because I've like held him up to the camera in the past and he doesn't like being held up or something like that. I don't know. So it is Friday the 16th. There is a video game show, I guess like news type show type thing that took place in Japan, I think, recently. And I didn't hear much from it, but I did hear that one of my favorite game series, Suikoden, specifically Suikoden 1 and 2, are getting a remaster. They're getting updated and they're going to be released as a bundle, the two games together. So that's really cool. If you have never played those games and you want a really good RPG series, I specifically really enjoy the first two games in that series. And some of the original creators of those games are they did a Kickstarter and they're making a game called Ayuden Chronicles, like 100 Heroes or something. And doing it in that specific style because the original creators, don't have the the rights to the series, unfortunately. It's owned by Konami. So yeah, that's a thing that's pretty cool. It's good to see an old series like that get some attention. I'm just gonna mute. Sorry about that. You will hear the puppy scrambling around because he's so excited. Yeah, we won't be working on Monday. Um, but we've got a house showing on Sunday, so we're getting our house ready for that. And then just yesterday, the light in our kitchen dies, and so we get replacement light bulbs, and it's a set of halogen bulbs, two of them. But we take it apart and we replace the bulbs, and it still doesn't work. And so we're going, what the heck? Okay, maybe it's a problem with the ballast. So we're looking into how much it's going to cost and the effort involved in replacing the ballast, and then it looks like, okay, maybe it's just easier to bypass the ballast altogether. So you take the ballast out, rewire it, and then you use LEDs instead, because the LED bulbs, unlike the halogens, don't require ballast. So we get some LED bulbs and we put those in, and we take out the ballast and we bypass it and we put in the LED bulbs, and they don't work. And we're going, what the heck? Do we need to hire a professional for this? Let's try one more set of different LED bulbs, because maybe the ones we got are wrong. And the final set of LED bulbs worked. So the light is on in the kitchen again, and everything's back in place, and it looks very nice. But the past day has been a little stressful because of that, because we're like, we can't have the kitchen lights not work when someone's coming to view our house to try and buy it. No, they were halogen bulbs. It says on them HG for halogen. For mercury? Not sure. Not for halogen? Really? I thought I saw halogen on the packaging. Alright. I know they contain mercury. Oh, Hg is the symbol of chemical element mercury. For its Latin name, hydrargyrum. I did not know that hydrargyrum was a name for mercury, and I didn't know that the periodic symbol is Hg. Alright. I was wrong. I didn't know that. Sharkies have had their own mercury bulb problems. I mean, realistically, breaking one of those lights is probably not going to be a real problem. But I can definitely understand concern. So now we've got some lights to return and some lights to get rid of. And then a bunch of cleaning to do between this evening and tomorrow morning, because we're also going to be out of town for going to visit my stepdad tomorrow. So yeah, tonight and tomorrow is going to be pretty busy. Once one breaks, the mercury disperses. So yeah, yeah. I mean, open a window if you're inside, and if you're outside, yeah, just get a broom. So what did everyone think of the beginning of Men-at-Arms last time? We got through to page 33 from page 7. Every time I look at a page number in this book, I feel like I'm going to have to subtract 7 from it to really figure out where we're at. Why, thank you, BBAB. We don't have too much to do because we're basically keeping the house in a pretty close state of readiness right now. But we do have some cleaning to do. The dishwasher is going right now. I don't know whether it's going to end during the stream or not. Get our little tune. We got some counters to wipe and a table to clear off and some papers to put away and some clothes to hide, beds to make, things like that, but vacuuming up puppy hair, yes. But it's not stuff that should take too long. Though I do kind of just get tired thinking about it. But it's interesting that it is a similar beginning structure with different face. Group of disgruntled citizens who think the city is being run wrong because they don't have the status they should. Well, sort of, though. Sort of. There are people that are disgruntled, yes, but so far there seems to be only one person that really wants to take any action, who tried to get others to go along with him, but at this point, as far as we're aware, it kind of seems like he's acting on his own. Just with the Brethren and Guards. They were working class. These are bougies. The nobility's take on Vetinari's rule was interesting, wasn't it? They very much seemed to be all like, oh yeah, he's bad, isn't he? Yeah, he's pretty bad. But he's not as bad as this person or this person or this person. Or remember that person? That was really bad. Mad Lord Snapcase. And everything does seem to work, doesn't it? Yes, it does work. He's like the least worst. You don't like Vetinari because he's smarter than you, and he's a schemer, but his schemes work, and everybody kind of comes out ahead as a result. So he personally kind of seems like a jerk, but you're making money from him being there. There were similar complaints of the impotence of their situation. What happened with your spelling of that word? Yeah, I was like, is this supposed to be impotence or omnipotence? It's going to be kind of weird voting in this next one, isn't it? Because we're kind of sort of going to be voting with the intention of leaving this area, this voting district. So we'll do the best we can for the area before we leave, I guess. People maybe don't like Vetinari because they don't have as many loopholes to exploit for their own gain. Yeah, that's probably true. I think a lot of people don't like him because he just doesn't seem right. Like Farmouse says, he's not a terribly likable kind of person. You don't like him even if he's doing a good job. Something like that. Yeah. So, from the beginning of the book, we've got an account that Sam Vimes is retiring to go off and be a gentleman of leisure. But it does not seem like there is going to be a good replacement for him so far. The best option seems to be Carrot, except that Carrot is relatively new to the watch, so it's kind of odd to, you know, he hasn't been there that long and now he's in charge. Doesn't feel quite right, even though he does seem to be doing a great job. It's interesting to see how much Carrot has changed from guards to men-at-arms. He's still the same old Carrot, but now he seems, it's like from the beginning of this book and the way he handled that thief, he seems very competent, doesn't he? Like he's getting, even if he is too honest, he's got the hang of the way the city works. He's got the layout of at least the part of the city he was patrolling memorized better than anybody else. He knows everybody by name. Carrot's skilled but a little enthusiastic. Yeah, that's true. I wonder whether, we haven't really seen yet, I wonder whether he's still adhering to laws that are no longer really applicable. Because that was a problem he had in Guards, was that he would, you know, he had the book of law from like hundreds of years ago. Maybe that's an exaggeration, maybe it wasn't hundreds, I don't remember exactly, but there were laws in there that were basically unknown that he was trying to enforce. And sometimes that was a problem. It seems like at this point he's got the hang of the guilds. Licensed thieves and such. As far as you understand it, Vetinari is supposed to be like the prince a la Machiavelli. That makes sense, yeah. That seems like a good comparison. I wonder if that is actually sort of the basis for his character. Did you see somewhere that it was that? Right. So, as Viscount Skater says, all the guild chappies put up with him because anyone else would be worse, yes? Going back to Vetinari, we've certainly had some difficult ones. We've got homicidal Lord Winder, deranged Lord Harmony, laughing Lord Scapula. I'm sure there were a few others mentioned, because I remember Lord Snapcase being mentioned. Yes, so Carrot was showing the new recruit Constable Angua around the town. Apparently also Detritus the Troll is a new recruit, as well as a dwarf named, I want to say, Cuddy. I think so. Trying to find the page. I'm taller than I look. There it is. Lance Constable Cuddy. And then where we finished up was right after Edward de Eath had possibly slightly accidentally murdered Beano the Clown. I say accidentally because it sounded like Edward was kind of freaking out over the murder. I didn't mean to hit you that hard, I only wanted you out of the way. And we had Death take a crack at a knock-knock joke, but that didn't really work out. I think it was more supposed to be like knocking unconscious, and it ended up being a killing instead. So, why don't I start up? In my copy, we are on page 33, about 3/4 of the way down. I don't know if everyone else's copies are the same. Yeah. The last bit was Beano smiling grimly under his makeup, saying, "I like it." Same pagination for you? Okay. Sorry, just making an adjustment here. Everybody ready? Ready, steady, ready, Freddy? I hear a puppy. Are you returning for your final? Here. Didn't get this one before. Oh, you dropped it. Where'd it go? You got it? That was it. You wanting to come up now? No, I don't think so. Okay, page 33. Vime's meeting with the patrician ended as all such meetings did. Oh, he's gone. No, he's over here. You want to get a drink? Okay. Vime's meeting with the patrician. Just gonna let him have his drink. He's very thirsty. All those snacks. We'll get there. Big drink. He's gonna need a walk after this is done. You good? All done? Okay. Third time's the charm. Let me try this once more. Vime's meeting with the patrician ended as all such meetings did, with the guest going away in possession of an unfocused yet nagging suspicion that he'd only just escaped with his life. Vimes trudged on to see his bride-to-be. He knew where she would be found. The sign, scrawled across the big double gates in Morphic Street, said, "Here be dragons." I don't know why, but there's no O. It's just Dragns. Dragons. The brass plaque beside the gates said, "The Ankh-Morpork Sunshine Sanctuary for Sick Dragons." There was a small and hollow and pathetic dragon made out of papier-mâché and holding a collection box, chained very heavily to the wall, and bearing the sign, "Don't let my flame go out." This was where Lady Sybil Ramkin spent most of her days. She was, Vimes had been told, the richest woman in Ankh-Morpork. In fact, she was richer than all the other women in Ankh-Morpork rolled, if that were possible, into one. You know, I don't think I got the impression that she was that wealthy before from Guards. Maybe it's like that she specifically owns that wealth as opposed to it belonging to a husband or something like that. Maybe that's why. It was going to be a strange wedding, people said. Yeah. Vimes treated his social superiors with barely concealed distaste, because the women made his head ache and the men made his fists itch. And Sybil Ramkin was the last survivor of one of the oldest families in Ankh. But they'd been thrown together like twigs in a whirlpool and had yielded to the inevitable. When he was a little boy, Sam Vimes had thought that the very rich ate off gold plates and lived in marble houses. He'd learned something new. The very, very rich could afford to be poor. Sybil Ramkin lived in the kind of poverty that was only available to the very rich, a poverty approached from the other side. Women who were merely well off, saved up, and bought dresses made of silk edged with lace and pearls. But Lady Ramkin was so rich she could afford to stomp around the place in rubber boots and a tweed skirt that had belonged to her mother. She was so rich she could afford to live on biscuits and cheese sandwiches. She was so rich she lived in 3 rooms in a 34-roomed mansion. The rest of them were full of very expensive and very old furniture, covered in dust sheets. Now, this next bit that we're about to read is very well known, I think. I've seen this passed around the internet a variety of times. So you might recognize this part even if you've never read the book before. But if you haven't heard this before, enjoy. It's good. The reason that the rich were so rich, Vimes reasoned, was because they managed to spend less money. Take Boots, for example. He earned $38 a month, plus allowances. A really good pair of leather boots cost $50. But an affordable pair of boots, which were sort of okay for a season or two and then leaked like hell when the cardboard gave out, cost about $10. Those were the kind of boots Vimes always bought, and wore until the soles were so thin that he could tell where he was in Ankh-Morpork on a foggy night by the feel of the cobbles. But the thing was that good boots lasted for years and years. A man who could afford $50 had a pair of boots that'd still be keeping his feet dry in 10 years' time, while a poor man who could only afford cheap boots would have spent $100 on boots in the same time and would still have wet feet. This was the Captain Samuel Vimes' boots theory of socioeconomic unfairness. The Sharkies have seen this before. Like I said, I've seen it go around a few times. It's a good set of paragraphs. This Captain Samuel Vimes' boots theory of socioeconomic unfairness. The point was that Sybil Ramkin hardly ever had to buy anything. That would be pretty cool. The point was that Sybil Ramkin hardly ever had to buy anything. The mansion was full of this big, solid furniture bought by her ancestors. It never wore out. She had whole boxes full of jewelry which just seemed to have accumulated over the centuries. Vimes had seen a wine cellar that a regiment of speleologists, taking a shot on that one, Speleologists, speleologists. Vimes had seen a wine cellar that a regiment of speleologists could get so happily drunk in that they wouldn't mind that they'd got lost without a trace. Lady Sybil Ramkin lived quite comfortably from day to day by spending, Vimes estimated, about half as much as he did. But she spent a lot more on dragons. The Sunshine Sanctuary for sick dragons was built with very, very thick walls and a very, very lightweight roof. An idiosyncrasy of architecture normally only found elsewhere in firework factories. And this is because the natural condition of the common swamp dragon is to be chronically ill, and the natural state of an unhealthy dragon is to be laminated across the walls, floor, and ceiling of whatever room it is in. A swamp dragon is a badly run, dangerously unstable chemical factory, one step from disaster. One quite small step. Speleologist. I think that's what I said the first 2 times. The last time I might have said it differently. One who studies caves. Oh, okay. That wouldn't have been my guess. But it makes sense because a spelunker is, a cave diver, so. Mister had already guessed it. I got bonus points in a class one time for knowing what a spelunker was. A cave diver. And the reason that I knew what a spelunker was, and had known since I was about 4, was because I had a game called Spelunker for the Nintendo Entertainment System. So don't say video games never teach you nothing. It has been speculated that its habit of exploding violently when angry, excited, frightened, or merely plain bored is a developed survival trait, asterisk, to discourage predators. Eat dragons, it proclaims, and you will have a case of indigestion to which the term blast radius will be appropriate. So, developed survival trait. Footnote. From the point of view of the species as a whole, not from the point of view of the dragon now landing in small pieces around the landscape. End of footnote. Vimes, therefore, pushed the door open carefully. The smell of dragons engulfed him. It was an unusual smell, even by Ankh-Morpork standards. It put Vimes in mind of a pond that had been used to dump alchemical waste for several years, and then drained. Small dragons whistled and yammered at him from pens on either side of the path. Several excited gusts of flame sizzled the hair on his bare shins. He found Sybil Ramkin with a couple of the miscellaneous young women in breeches who helped run the sanctuary. They were generally called Sarah or Emma, and all looked exactly the same to Vimes. They were struggling with what seemed to be an irate sack. She looked up as he approached. "Ah, no, oh, too high. Ah, here's Sam," she said. What is going on there? That was rough. Apparently I need more water. "Here's Sam," she said. "Hold this, there's a lamb." Sorry, everyone. Apparently my Sybil is squeaky today. The sack was thrust into his arms. At the same moment, a talon ripped out of the bottom of the sack and scraped down his breastplate in a spirited attempt to disembowel him. A spiky-eared head thrust its way out of the other end. Two glowing red eyes focused on him briefly. A tooth-serrated mouth gaped open, and a gush of evil-smelling vapor washed over him. Lady Ramkin grabbed the lower jaw triumphantly and thrust the other arm up to the elbow down the little dragon's throat. "Got you!" She turned to Vimes, who was still rigid with shock. "Little devil wouldn't take his limestone tablet. Swallow! Swallow! There! Who's a good boy, then? You can let him go now." The sack slipped from Vimes' arms. "Bad case of flameless gripe," said Lady Ramkin. "Hope we've got it in time." The dragon ripped its way out of the sack and looked around for something to incinerate. Everyone tried to get out of the way. Then its eyes crossed, and it hiccuped. The limestone tablet pinged off the opposite wall. "Everybody down!" They leapt for such cover as was provided by a water trough and a pile of clinkers. The dragon hiccuped again and looked puzzled. Then it exploded. They stuck their heads up when the smoke had cleared and looked down at the sad little crater. Lady Ramkin took a handkerchief out of a pocket of her leather overall and blew her nose. "Silly little bugger," she said. "Oh, well. How are you, Sam? Did you go to see Havelock?" Havelock or Havelock? Havelock? I had a character in a role-playing game once with the same name, and I got another one of the players kept saying, "Havelock will travel." Havelock? Vimes nodded. Never in his life, he thought, would he get used to the idea of the patrician of Ankh-Morpork having a first name, or that anyone could ever know him well enough to call him by it. "I've been thinking about this dinner tomorrow night," he said desperately. "You know, I really don't think I can—" "Don't be silly," said Lady Ramkin. "You'll enjoy it. It's time you met the right people. You know that." He nodded mournfully. Reminds you of Homelock Sherms? I'm not familiar with Homelock Sherms. Oh, okay. I like it. It's good. "We shall expect you up at the house at 8 o'clock, then," she said. "And don't look like that. It'll help you tremendously. You're far too good a man to spend his nights traipsing around dark, wet streets. It's time you got on in the world." Sherms. Vimes wanted to say that he liked traipsing around dark, wet streets, but it would be no use. He didn't like it much. It was just what he'd always done. He thought about his badge in the same way he thought about his nose. He didn't love it or hate it. It was just his badge. "So you just run along. It'll be terrific fun. Have you got a handkerchief?" Vimes panicked. "What?" "Give it to me." She held it close to his mouth. "Spit," she commanded. She dabbed at a smudge on his cheek. One of the interchangeable Emmas gave a giggle that was just audible. Lady Ramkin ignored it. "There," she said. "That's better. Now, off you go and keep the streets safe for all of us. And if you want to do something really useful, you could find Chubby." "Chubby?" "He got out of his pen last night." "A dragon?" Vimes groaned and pulled a cheap cigar out of his pocket. Swamp dragons were becoming a minor nuisance in the city. Lady Ramkin got very angry about it. People would buy them when they were 6 inches long and a cute way of lighting fires, and then, when they were burning the furniture and leaving corrosive holes in the carpet, the floor, and the cellar ceiling underneath it, they'd be shoved out to fend for themselves. "We rescued him from a blacksmith in Easy Street," said Lady Ramkin. "I said, 'My good man, you can use a forge like everyone else.' Poor little thing." "Chubby," said Vimes. "Got a light?" "He's got a blue collar," said Lady Ramkin. "Right, yes. He'll follow you like a lamb if he thinks you've got a charcoal biscuit." "Right." Vimes patted his pockets. "They're a little bit overexcited in this heat." Vimes reached down into a pen of hatchlings and picked up a small one, which flapped its stubby wings excitedly. It spurted a brief jet of blue flame. Vimes inhaled quickly. "Sam, I really wish you wouldn't do that." "Sorry." How many characters can you think of that have lit a cigar with a dragon? "So, If you could get young Carrot and that nice Corporal Nobbs to keep an eye out for, no problem. For some reason, Lady Sybil, keen of eye in every other respect, persisted in thinking of Corporal Nobbs as a cheeky, lovable rascal. It had always puzzled Sam Vimes. It must be the attraction of opposites. The Ramkins were more highly bred than a hilltop bakery. I didn't remember that one. I feel like it has extra impact reading it out loud. More highly bred than a hilltop bakery. Wow. The Ramkins were more highly bred than a hilltop bakery, whereas Corporal Nobbs had been disqualified from the human race for shoving. I remember that bit about Nobbs being disqualified from the human race. Yeah, the closest I think we've got is Zamarian Daniels. Zamarian Daniels. Hey, hello. Welcome. I'm Sleet, and I'm reading Men-at-Arms by Sir Terry Pratchett. We're not very far in. We've only, this is just the second stream reading this particular book. So, welcome. As he walked down the street in his old leather and rusty mail, with his helmet screwed on his head, and the feel of the cobbles through the worn soles of his boots telling him he was in Acre Alley, no one would have believed that they were looking at a man who was very soon going to marry the richest woman in Ankh-Morpork. Chubby was not a happy dragon. He missed the forge. Can I read Tumblr comics? I have not read Tumblr comics. I haven't really delved into reading comics yet on stream. I read them in my personal time. But so far we've just been reading novels. This is our, 6th or 7th or something? Are you involved in a Tumblr comic, or is it just something that you enjoy? Chubby was not a happy dragon. He missed the forge. He'd quite liked it in the forge. He got all the coal he could eat, and the blacksmith hadn't been a particularly unkind man. Chubby had not demanded much out of life, and had got it. Then this large woman had taken him away and put him in a pen. There had been other dragons around. Chubby didn't particularly like other dragons. And people had given him unfamiliar coal. He'd been quite pleased when someone had taken him out of the pen in the middle of the night. He thought he was going back to the blacksmith. Now it was dawning on him that this was not happening. He was in a box. He was being bumped around, and now he was getting angry. We've had a dragon napping. Sergeant Colin fanned himself with his clipboard and then glared at the assembled guards. He coughed. "Right then, people," he said. "Settle down." "We are settled down, Fred," said Corporal Nobbs. Was that a little too easily understandable to be Nobby? "That's Sergeant to you, Nobby," said Sergeant Colin. About right, all right. "What do we have to sit down for, anyway? We didn't used to do all this. I feel right back sitting down listening to you going on about, 'We got to do it proper, now there's more of us,'" said Sergeant Colin. "Right. Ahem. Right. Okay. We welcome to the guard today Lance Constable Detritus, don't salute, and Lance Constable Cuddy. Also, Lance Constable Angua. We hope you will have a long and... What's that you've got there, Cuddy?" "What?" said Cuddy, innocently. "I can't help noticing that you still has got there what appears to be a double-headed throwing axe, Lance Constable, despite what I vouchsafed to you earlier re-guard rules." Name was Cuddy, yes. "Cultural weapon, Sergeant?" said Cuddy, hopefully. "You can leave it in your locker. Guards carry one sword, short, and one truncheon. With the exception of detritus," he added mentally. "Firstly, because even the longest sword nestled in the troll's huge hand like a toothpick. And secondly, because until they'd got this saluting business sorted out, he wasn't about to see a member of the watch nail his own hand to his own ear. He'd have a truncheon, and like it. Even then, he'd probably beat himself to death. Truncheon is a good word. Trolls and Dwarfs. Dwarfs and trolls. He didn't deserve it, not at this time of life. And that wasn't the worst of it. He coughed again. When he read from his clipboard, it was in the sing-song voice of someone who learned his public speaking at school. "Right," he said again, a little uncertainly. "So, says here, Sergeant, now, oh, it's you, Corporal Carrot, yes?" "Aren't you forgetting something, Sergeant?" said Carrot. "I dunno," said Colin cautiously. "Am I?" "About the recruits, Sarge. Something they've got to take?" Carrot prompted. Sergeant Colin rubbed his nose. Let's see. They had, as per standing orders, taken and signed for one shirt, male, chain, one helmet, iron and copper, one breastplate, iron, except in the case of Lance Constable Angua, who'd need to be fitted special, and Lance Constable Detritus, who'd signed for a hastily adapted piece of armor which had once belonged to a war elephant, one truncheon, oak, one emergency pike or halberd, one crossbow, one hourglass, one short sword, except for Lance Constable Detritus, and one badge, comma, office of, comma, night watchman's, comma, copper. "I think they've got the lot, Carrot," he said. "All signed for. Even Detritus got someone to make an X for him." "They've got to take the oath, Sarge." "Oh. Have they?" "Yes, Sarge. It's the law." Sergeant Colin looked embarrassed. It probably was the law, at that. Carrot was much better at this sort of thing. He knew the laws of Ankh-Morpork by heart. He was the only person who did. All Colin knew was that he'd never taken an oath when he joined, and as for Nobby, the best he'd ever get to an oath was something like, "Bugger this for a game of soldiers." "All right, then," he said. "You've all, got to take the oath, eh? And Corporal Carrot will show you how. Did you take the, oath when you joined us, Carrot?" "Oh, yes, Sarge. Only no one asked me, so I gave it to myself, quiet-like." "Oh, right. Carry on, then." Carrot stood up and removed his helmet. He smoothed down his hair. Then he raised his right hand. "Raise your right hands, too," he said. That's the one nearest Lance Constable Angua, Lance Constable Detritus. And repeat after me." He closed his eyes, and his lips moved for a moment, as though he was reading something off the inside of his skull. I, square bracket, recruit's name, square bracket, comma." He nodded at them. "You say it." They chorused a reply. Angua tried not to laugh. "Do solemnly swear by square bracket recruit's deity of choice square bracket." Angua couldn't trust herself to look at Carrot's face. "To uphold the laws and ordinances of the city of Ankh-Morpork, serve the public truft, comma, and defend the subjects of his stroke her bracket delete whichever is inappropriate bracket majesty bracket name of reigning monarch bracket." Angua tried to look at a point behind Carrot's ear. On top of everything else, Detritus's patient monotone was already several dozen words behind everyone else. "Without fear, comma, favor, comma, or thought of personal safety, semicolon, to pursue evildoers and protect the innocent, comma, laying down my life if necessary in the cause of said duty, comma." I don't know how else to read this weird F without a line through it thing. So that's what you're getting. "In the cause of said duty, comma, so help me, bracket, aforefed deity, bracket, full stop, gods save the king, stroke, queen, bracket, delete whichever is inappropriate, bracket, full stop." Angua subsided gratefully, and then did see Carrot's face. There were unmistakable tears trickling down his cheek. Yeah, I know it's supposed to represent an S, but because we've got S's in this book, so how do I distinguish that this is differently? So yeah, that's what I'm going with. Kind of a SF hybrid. Whew, that was a mouthful. Right. That's it, then. Thank you," said Sergeant Colin, after a while. Protect the innocent, comma."
In your own time, Lance Constable Detritus.
The sergeant cleared his throat and consulted the clipboard again.
Now, Grabber Hoskins has been let out of jail again, so be on the lookout. You know what he's like when he's had his celebratory drink. And bloody Coalface the Troll beat up 4 men last night. In the cough of said duty, comma.
Where's Captain Vimes? Demanded Nobby. He should be doing this.
Captain Vimes is sorting things out,
said Sergeant Colin.
It's not easy, learning civilianing. Right.
He glanced at his clipboard again, and back to the guardsmen. Men. Ha! His lips moved as he counted. There, sitting between Nobby and Constable Cuddy, was a very small, raggedy man, whose beard and hair were so overgrown and matted together that he looked like a ferret peering out of a bush.
Me, brack et, af or said, day it e, brack et, full stop. Oh, no, he said. What are you doing here and now? Thank you, Detritus. Don't salute! You can sit down now.
Mr. Carrot brings me in,
said Here and Now.
Protective custody, Sarge,
said Carrot.
Again?
Colin unhooked the cell keys from their nail over the desk and tossed them to the thief.
All right, cell 3. Take the keys in with you. We'll holler if we need 'em back.
You're tough, Mr. Colin,
said Here and Now, wandering down the steps to the cells. Colin shook his head.
Worst thief in the world, he said.
He doesn't look that good, said Angua.
No, I mean the worst, said Colin, as in not good at it.
Remember when he was going to go all the way up to Dunmanifeston to steal the secret fire from the gods?
Said Nobby. And I said, but we've got it, Here and Now. We've had it for thousands of years, said Carrot. And he said, that's right, so it has antique value. Footnote. Fingers Mazda, the first thief in the world, stole fire from the gods, but he was unable to fence it. It was too hot. Footnote the second, there's a footnote on this footnote. He really got burned on that deal. Nice, Farmhouse, nice. End of footnotes 1 and 2. Pratchett couldn't resist. Yeah, I'm thinking, like, did he have a kid by this point? Because those are some dad jokes right there.
Poor old chap,
said Sergeant Colin.
Okay, what else have we got? Yes, Carrot?
Now they've got to take the king's shilling, said Carrot.
Right, yes, okay.
Colin fished in his pocket and took out 3 sequin-sized Ankh-Morpork dollars, which had about the gold content of seawater. He tossed them one at a time to the recruits. Okay. 1976 is earlier than I would have expected. Dad joke certified.
This is called the King's Shilling,
He said, glancing at Carrot.
Dunno why. You gotta give it when you join. Regulations, see? Shows you've joined.
He looked embarrassed for a moment, and then coughed.
Right. Oh, yeah. Load of rock. Some trolls,
He corrected himself.
got some kind of march down Short Street. Lance Constable Detritus, don't let him salute. Right. What's this about then? It's Troll New Year,
said Detritus. I think that needs a little refining, the Detritus voice, but I think it's close.
Has it? Suppose we got to learn about this sort of thing now. And it says here there's this Gritsuck, this dwarf rally or something.
Battle of Coombe Valley Day, said Constable Cuddy. Famous victory over the trolls.
He looked smug, insofar as anything could be seen behind the beard.
Yeah, from ambush,
grunted Detritus, glowering at the dwarf.
What? It was the trolls,
Cuddy began.
Shut up,
said Colin.
Look, it says here they're marching. Says here they're marching up Short Street.
He turned the paper over.
Is this right?
Trolls going one way, dwarfs going the other, said Carrot.
Now there's a parade you don't want to miss,
said Nobby. What's wrong? said Angua. Carrot waved his hands vaguely in the air. Oh, dear! It's going to be dreadful! We must do something!
Dwarfs and trolls get along like a house on fire,
said Nobby.
Ever been in a burning house, miss?
Sergeant Colin's normally red face had gone pale pink. He buckled on his sword belt and picked up his truncheon.
Remember,
he said,
let's be careful out there.
Yeah,
said Nobby.
Let's be careful to stay in here.
To understand why dwarfs and trolls don't like each other, you have to go back a long way. They get along like chalk and cheese. Very like chalk and cheese, really. One is organic, the other isn't, and also smells a bit cheesy. Dwarfs make a living by smashing up rocks with valuable minerals in them, and the silicon-based life form known as trolls are, basically, rocks with valuable minerals in them. In the wild, they also spend most of the daylight hours dormant. And that's not a situation a rock containing valuable minerals needs to be in when there are dwarfs around. There's kind of a point hidden here that I have wondered about before. Because in the first couple of books, I think specifically in Color of Magic, there's this whole thing about dwarfs, or about trolls, and there's a really big troll. But the thing is that trolls become stationary in daylight. Like when the sun hits them, they can't move. And so it's mentioned here, sort of subtly in the middle of this, in the wild, they also spend most of the daylight hours dormant. I'd always kind of figured that that was just one of those things that sort of got forgotten in the later Discworld books, because, you know, in Ankh-Morpork, the trolls are wandering around during the day all the time. So I don't think I'd noticed that particular bit in this one here, where I guess that sort of addresses it. And it's just like, yeah, in the wild, they're dormant during the daylight hours. It's different in the city because of reasons, I guess. So, they also spend most of the daylight hours dormant, and that's not a situation a rock containing valuable minerals needs to be in when there are dwarfs around. And dwarfs hate trolls because, after you've just found an interesting seam of valuable minerals, you don't like rocks that suddenly stand up and tear your arm off because you've just stuck a pickaxe in their ear. It was a state of permanent interspecies vendetta, and, like all good vendettas, didn't really need a reason anymore. It was enough that it had already existed. Asterisk. Dwarfs hated trolls because trolls hated dwarfs, and vice versa. Footnote. The Battle of Coombe Valley is the only one known to history where both sides ambushed each other. End of footnote. City pollution might make a difference, maybe. The watch lurked in Three Lamps Alley, which was about halfway down Short Street. There was a distant crackle of fireworks. Dwarfs let them off to drive away evil mine spirits. Trolls let them off because they tasted nice.
Don't see why we can't let 'em fight 'em out amongst themselves and then arrest the losers,
said Corporal Nobbs.
That's what we always used to do.
The patrician gets really sharty about ethnic trouble,
said Sergeant Colin moodily.
He gets really sarcastic about it.
A thought struck him. He brightened up a little bit.
Got any ideas, Carrot?
He said. Yeah, that was shirty. What else could it have been? The word with an A. I see. He gets really shirty, everyone. The patrician gets shirty. And sarcastic. You know, as I was reading it, I was like, this is gonna get me in trouble, isn't it? You both heard it. Sure tea. Robakio heard it too. Hi, Robakio. Good to see you. Robo Takio. So,
got any ideas, Carrot?
He said. A second thought struck him. Carrot was a simple lad.
Corporal Carrot.
Sarge?
Sort this lot out, will you?
Carrot peered around the corner at the advancing walls of Trolls and Dwarfs. They'd already seen each other.
Right you are, Sergeant,
he said.
Lance Constables Cuddy and Detritus don't salute. You come with me.
You can't let him go out there, said Angua. It's certain death.
Got a real sense of duty, that boy,
said Corporal Nobbs. He took a minute length of dog end from behind his ear and struck a match on the sole of his boot.
Don't worry, miss,
said Colin.
He...
Lance Constable, said Angua.
What?
Lance Constable, she repeated. Not Miss. Carrot says I don't have any sex while I'm on duty. To the background of Nobby's frantic coughing, Colin said, very quickly,
"What I mean is, Lance Constable, young Carrot's got charisma. Bags of charisma.
Charisma?
Bags of it."
Bags of charisma, that's right. The jolting had stopped. Chubby was really annoyed now. Really, really annoyed. There was a rustling noise. A piece of sacking moved aside, and there, staring at Chubby, was another male dragon. It looked annoyed. Chubby reacted in the only way he knew how. A D&D artifact or a brand of pork rinds. Bags of charisma. Wow. Carrot stood in the middle of the street, arms folded, while the two new recruits stood just behind him, trying to keep an eye on both approaching marches at the same time. Colin thought Carrot was simple. Carrot often struck people as simple, and he was. Where people went wrong was thinking that simple meant the same as stupid. Carrot was not stupid. He was direct and honest and good-natured and honorable in all his dealings. In Ankh-Morpork, this would normally have added up to stupid in any case, and would have given him the survival quotient of a jellyfish in a blast furnace. But there were a couple of other factors. One was a punch that even trolls had learned to respect. The other was that Carrot was genuinely, almost supernaturally, likable. He got on well with people, even while arresting them. He had an exceptional memory for names. For most of his young life, he'd lived in a small dwarf colony where there were hardly any other people to know. Then, suddenly, he was in a huge city, and it was as if a talent had been waiting to unfold, and was still unfolding. He waved cheerfully at the approaching dwarfs. "Morning, Mr. Cumblethigh! Morning, Mr. Strong in the Arm!" Then he turned and waved at the leading troll. There was a muffled pop as the firework went off. "Morning, Mr. Bauxite!" He cupped his hands. "If you could all just stop and listen to me!" he bellowed. The two marches did stop, with some hesitation and a general piling up of the people in the back. It was that or walk over Carrot. If Carrot did have a minor fault, it lay in not paying attention to small details around him when his mind was on other things. So the whispered conversation behind his back was currently escaping him. "Ha! It was due an ambush, and your mother was an or—" "Now then, gentlemen," said Carrot, in a reasoned and amiable voice, "I'm sure there's no need for this belligerent manner."
"You ambush us too. My great-great-grandfather, he at Coombe Valley, he tell me."
Kuro Nico Akuma! Welcome back. Good to see you. I've seen you've been doing some streaming recently. How's it going? Are you streaming right now, actually? We're reading Men at Arms by Sir Terry Pratchett. You are not at the moment, but we're not very far in. We're on page 48, which is actually 41, because for some reason the first page was page 7. So we're not super far in, and we've got what's his rank? Corporal. Corporal Carrot is attempting to stop a parade of trolls and a parade of dwarfs from basically going into battle with one another in the middle of a city. You were streaming Fall Guys a little while ago. I played some Fall Guys when it came out. That was pretty fun. But I haven't played it for a while. Are you any good at it? I was not. I was like good enough to come in second pretty frequently. I probably won like one round. It's the space season. Oh boy. You're decent? All right. So, in our fair city, on such a lovely day, I must ask you as good citizens of Ankh-Morpork.
Yeah? You even know who your father is, do you?
That, while you must certainly celebrate your proud ethnic folkways, to profit by the example of my fellow officers here, who have sunk their ancient differences.
I smash you head, you roguesome dwarfs.
For the greater benefit of
I could take you with one hand tied behind my back.
the city, whose badge they are.
You get opportunity. I tie both hands behind you back.
Proud and privileged to wear.
Ark!
Oh!
It dawned on Carrot that hardly anyone was paying any attention to him. He turned. Lance Constable Cuddy was upside down because Lance Constable Detritus was trying to bounce him on the cobbles by his helmet. Although Lance Constable Cuddy was putting the position to good effect by gripping Lance Constable Detritus around the knee and trying to sink his teeth into Lance Constable Detritus's ankle. The opposing marchers watched in fascination. The opposing marchers watched in fascination. We should do something, said Angua, from the guard's hiding place in the alley.
Well,
said Sergeant Colin, slowly.
It's always very tricky, ethnic.
Can put a foot wrong very easily,
said Nobby.
Very thin-skinned, your basic ethnic.
Thin-skinned? They're trying to kill one another.
It's cultural,
said Sergeant Colin, miserably.
No sense us trying to force our culture on 'em, is there? That's speciesist.
Out in the street, Corporal Carrot had gone very red in the face.
If he lays a finger on either of them, with all their friends watching,
said Nobby,
the plan is, we run away like hell.
Veins stood out on Carrot's mighty neck. He stuck his hands on his waist and bellowed, Lance Constable Detritus! Salute! They'd spent hours trying to teach him. Detritus's brain took some time to latch on to an idea, but once it was there, it didn't fade away fast. He saluted. His hand was full of dwarf. So, he saluted while holding Lance Constable Cuddy, swinging him up and over like a small, angry club. The sound of their helmets meeting echoed off the buildings, and it was followed a moment later by the crash of them both hitting the ground. Thank you. I've had some people suggest that before here. I wouldn't know where to start, though. Maybe I should look into it. Carrot prodded them with the toe of his sandal. Then he turned and strode towards the dwarf marchers, shaking with anger. In the alleyway, Sergeant Colin started to suck the rim of his helmet out of terror.
"You've got weapons, haven't you?"
snarled Carrot at 100 dwarfs.
"Own up! If the dwarfs who've got weapons don't drop them right this minute, the entire parade, and I mean the entire parade, will be put in the cells. I'm serious about this."
The dwarfs in the front row took a step backwards. There was a desultory tinkle of metallic objects hitting the ground.
"All of them,"
said Carrot menacingly.
"That includes you with the black beard trying to hide behind Mr. Hamslinger. I can see you, Mr. Strong in the Arm. Put it down. No one's amused."
"He's going to die, isn't he?" said Angua quietly.
Funny that,
said Nobby.
If we was to try it, we'd be little bits of mince. But it seems to work for him.
"Charisma,"
said Sergeant Colin, who was having to lean on the wall. "Do you mean charisma?" said Angua.
"Yeah, one of them things, yeah."
"How does he manage it?"
"Dunno,"
said Nobby.
"Suppose he's an easy lad to like."
Carrot had turned on the trolls, who were smirking at the dwarf's discomfiture.
"And as for you," he said, "I shall definitely be patrolling around Quarry Lane tonight, and I won't be seeing any trouble, will I?"
There was a shuffling of huge, oversized feet, and a general muttering. Carrot cupped his hand to his ear.
"I couldn't quite hear,"
he said. There was a louder murmur, a sort of toccata scored for 100 reluctant voices on the theme of
"Yes, Corporal Carrot."
Yes, I would definitely, I don't know, I haven't actually read or listened to many audiobooks. So what do they generally do for characters with voices opposing their own, I wonder? I take a shot at female voices, but I'm not I don't know. I'm not confident with them. Pretty much what I do. All right, fair enough.
"Right. Now, off you go, and let's have no more of this nonsense. There's good chaps."
I feel like my Carrot has been drifting slightly British for a little bit here. Carrot brushed the dust off his hands and smiled at everyone. The trolls looked puzzled. In theory, Carrot was a thin film of grease on the street. But somehow it just didn't seem to be happening. Angua said, "He just called 100 trolls good chaps. Some of them are just down off the mountains. Some of them have got lichen on them."
"Smartest thing on a troll,"
said Sergeant Colin. And then the world exploded. You're gonna make me brush, Nico. What did I say? Did I say brush? Probably use that, huh? I said brush. Alright. Deal with it. Yes, I said brush. Alright. Well, we'll just move on, shall we? The watch had left before Captain Vimes got back to Sidopolis Yard. He plodded up the stairs to his office and sat down in the sticky leather chair. He gazed blankly at the wall. He wanted to leave the guard. Of course he did. Yeah, apparently. It wasn't what you could call a way of life. Not life. Unsocial hours, never being certain from one day to the next what the law actually was in this pragmatic city. No home life to speak of. Bad food, eaten when you could. He'd even eaten some of Cut-Me-Own-Throat Dibbler's sausages in a bun before now. Okay, the two of you are trying now. It always seemed to be raining or baking hot. No friends except for the rest of the squad, because they were the only people who lived in your world. Whereas, in a few days, he would, as Thanks. Whereas in a few days he would, as Sergeant Colin had said, be on the gravy boat. Nothing to do all day but eat his meals and ride around on a big horse, shouting orders at people. At times like this, the image of old Sergeant Keppel floated across his memory. He'd been head of the watch when Vimes was a recruit. And, soon afterwards, he retired. They'd all clubbed together and bought him a cheap watch, one of those that'd keep going for a few years until the demon inside it evaporated. Bloody stupid idea, Vimes thought moodily, staring at the wall. Bloke leaves work, hands in his badge and hourglass and bell, and what did we get him? A watch. But he'd still come in to work the next day, with his new watch. To show everyone the ropes, he said. To tidy up a few loose ends, ha ha. See you youngsters don't get into trouble, ha ha. A month later, he was bringing the coal in and sweeping the floor, and running errands and helping people write reports. He was still there 5 years later. He was still there 6 years later, when one of the watch got in early and found him lying on the floor. And it emerged that no one knew where he lived, or even if there was a Mrs. Keppel. They had a whip round to bury him, Vimes remembered. There were just guards at the funeral. Come to think of it, there were always just guards at a guard's funeral. Of course, it wasn't like that now. Sergeant Colin had been happily married for years, perhaps because he and his wife arranged their working lives so that they only met occasionally, normally on the doorstep. But she left him decent meals in the oven, and there was clearly something there. They'd got grandchildren, even, so obviously there had been times when they'd been unable to avoid each other. Young Carrot had to fight young women off with a stick. And Corporal Nobbs, well, he probably made his own arrangements. He was said to have the body of a 25-year-old, although no one knew where he kept it. Angst, yeah. My week has been my I, there was a death in the family recently, so my week's been kind of bad the past few weeks, but I'm getting through. Thank you for asking all the same. Yeah, thank you. The point was that everyone else had someone. Even, oh boy, this is going to be a bad line right here. I apologize in advance for this line. Even if, in Nobby's case, it was probably against their will. Not one of Sir Terry's better lines, that one. So, Captain Vimes, what is it really? Do you care for her? Don't worry too much about love. That's a dicey word for the over 40s. Or are you just afraid of becoming some old man dying in the groove of his life and buried out of pity by a bunch of youngsters who never knew you as anything more or as anything other than some old fart who always seemed to be around the place and got sent out to bring back the coffee and hot figgins and was laughed at behind his back? He'd wanted to avoid that. And now, fate was handing him a fairy tale. The figgins, yep. What's a figgin? You don't want to be strung up by your figgins, do you? Of course, he'd known she was rich. But he hadn't expected the summons to Mr. Moorcomb's office. And his figgin placed on a spike. Yes, that's right. Mr. Moorcombe had been the Ramkins family solicitor for a long time. Centuries, in fact. He was a vampire. Is Figgin arms or head? No, Figgin is like a small pastry. In Ankh-Morpork, anyway. There was, in the prior book to this one, there was like a cult, and they had a whole oath type thing they swore, and one of the things in it was that, if you should go against the cult, basically, your figgin shall be placed upon a spike. And it was never really specified what a figgin was. The first you've heard in Discworld of vampires. Yeah, they come up occasionally. In this case, it's a solicitor. Mr. Moorcombe had been the Ramkins family solicitor for a long time. Centuries, in fact. He was a vampire. Vimes disliked vampires. Dwarfs were law-abiding little buggers when they were sober, and even trolls were all right if you kept them where you could see them. But all the undead made his neck itch. Live and let live was all very well, but there was a problem right there when you thought about it logically. You've read of near immortals of other types, but not vampires. All right. Neko Akuma wishes she was a vampire at times. Yeah, the food part would be rough, wouldn't it? I do like food. And I do like the sun. I like being warm. Being a vampire, you'd be cold all the time. I like being warm. Mr. Moorcombe was scrawny, like a tortoise, and very pale. Scrawny like a tortoise. It had taken him ages to come to the point, and when it came, the point nailed Vimes to his chair. If you're half vamp, if you're a daywalker like Blade. You've been rewatching. Are you talking about the series then? We just showed some friends of ours the film for the first time like 2 weeks ago. Um, I haven't actually watched the series yet. I've been intending to get around to it, but the movie is so good. I've watched I've watched the movie for What We Do in the Shadows too many times. For the guy who hates Draluk from The Damp Vampire Doesn't No Time. Oh, the one that hates Draluk because his mom is a big fan or something. Wait, he doesn't hate Draluk, does he? No, I'm thinking of the guy that hates the Vampire Hunter. You've seen the first two series. Have you watched the film? Because if not, you should definitely see it. It's so good. Yeah, he hates Ronaldo. I read it and I was like, that something's not right. All right. So, it had taken him ages to come to the point, and when it came, the point nailed Vimes to his chair.
How much? I believe I am right in saying the estate, including the farms, the areas of urban development, and the small area of unreal estate near the university, are together worth approximately $7 million a year. Yes, 7 million at current valuation, I would say. It's all mine? From the hour of your wedding to Lady Sybil, although she instructs me in this letter that you are to have access to all her accounts as of the present moment.
The pearly, dead eyes had watched Vimes carefully.
Lady Sybil, he said, owns approximately 1/10 of Ankh, and extensive properties in Morpork, plus, of course, considerable farmlands in... But, we'll own them together. Lady Sybil is very specific. She is deeding all the property to you as her husband. She has a somewhat old-fashioned approach.
He pushed a folded paper across the table. Vimes took it, unfolded it, and stared.
Should you predecease her, of course, Mr. Morecombe droned on, it will revert to her by common right of marriage, or to any fruit of the union, of course.
Blade is half vampire, yes. Catching up on chat. Unreal estate, yeah. I don't remember the specifics that Farmos is describing. I don't know if I ever knew them or not. Dracula is in the Marvel universe? Yeah, and he owes Moon Knight money. The nerd. I'm pretty sure Dracula is also in the DC universe because there is at least an animated film of Batman versus Dracula. And Batman gets his butt whooped in at least one fight scene that I've seen. Dracula gets around. I guess it's one of those characters that's both very famous and also, like, what's the word? There's no trademark. You want to see? You should look it up. It's pretty intense. All right, where was I? Vimes hadn't even said anything at that point. He'd just felt his mouth drop open and small areas of his brain fuse together. Public domain. I was thinking, what was I trying to think? What was I trying to think? I was thinking, I think I was going to say common property. Yeah, I need to. I watched like an episode or two of Castlevania, but never really went back to it.
Lady Sybil,
said the lawyer, the words coming from far away,
while not as young as she was, is a fine, healthy woman, and there is no reason why.
Vimes had got through the rest of the interview on automatic. He could hardly think about it now. When he tried, his thoughts kept skidding away. And, just as always happened when the world got too much for him, they skidded somewhere else. He pulled open the bottom drawer of his desk and stared at the shiny bottle of Bear Hugger's very fine whiskey. He wasn't sure how it had got there. Somehow he'd never got around to throwing it out. Start that again and you won't even see retirement. Stick to cigars. He shut the drawer and leaned back, taking a half-smoked cigar from his pocket. Good for Vimes sticking to quitting drinking. There's Creative Commons publication too. Ah, okay. Less awkward than creepy monk uncle talking to Garion in the last book, though. Creepy monk uncle? Monkle. Are we thinking of Belden? Oh, I missed Grandpa Vampire Lawyer's talking about having babies. Oh, the Gorem? Or, no, Relg. It's Relg. Yes. Yeah, that's fair. That was real uncomfortable. Oh, boy. So, he shut the drawer and leaned back, taking a half-smoked cigar from his pocket. Maybe the guards weren't so good now anyway. Politics. Ha! Watchmen like old Keppel would turn in their graves if they knew that the watch had taken on a And then the world exploded. The window blew in, peppering the wall behind Vimes's desk with fragments and cutting one of his ears. He threw himself to the floor and rolled under the desk. Right, that did it. The alchemists had blown up their guild house for the last time, if Vimes had anything to do with it. But when he peered over the windowsill, he saw, across the river, the column of dust rising over the Assassin's Guild. Let's go a little bit further. It's not quite 9 o'clock here. The rest of the watch came trotting along Filigree Street as Vimes reached the guild entrance. A couple of black-clad assassins... Grunkle Sam, right? Or is it Grunkle Stu? Stan. Sam, Stu, no, it's Stan. I kind of went on either side of it. Grunkle Stan. We'd actually, in your case, it's Grunkle Bob. Yeah. A couple of black-clad assassins barred his way, in a polite manner which nevertheless indicated that impoliteness was a future option. There were sounds of hurrying feet behind the gates.
You see this badge? You see it?
Vimes demanded. Nevertheless, this is guild property, said an assassin.
Let us in the name of the law,
bellowed Vimes. The assassin smiled nervously at him. The law is that guild law prevails inside guild walls, he said. Vimes glared at him. But it was true. The laws of the city, such as they were, stopped outside the guild houses. The guilds had their own laws. The guild owned the... He stopped. Behind him, Lance Constable Angua reached down and picked up a fragment of glass. Then she stirred the debris with her foot. And then her gaze met that of a small, nondescript mongrel dog, watching her very intently from under a cart. In fact, nondescript was not what it was. It was very easy to descript. It looked like halitosis with a wet nose.
Woof, woof,
said the dog, in a bored way.
Woof, 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 and growl, growl.
The dog trotted into the mouth of an alleyway. Angua glanced around and followed it. The rest of the squad were gathered around Vimes, who'd gone very quiet.
Fetch me the master of assassins,
he said.
Now!
The young assassin tried to sneer. Ha! Your uniform doesn't scare me, he said. Vimes looked down at his battered breastplate and worn mail.
You're right, he said. This is not a scary uniform. I'm sorry. Forward, Corporal Carrot and Lance Constable Detritus!
The assassin was suddenly aware of the sunlight being blocked out. The dishes are done.
Now these, I think you'll agree,
said Vimes from somewhere behind the eclipse,
are scary uniforms.
The assassin nodded slowly. He hadn't asked for this. Usually there were never any guards outside the guild. What would be the point? He had, tucked away in his exquisitely tailored black clothes, at least 18 devices for killing people. But he was becoming aware that Lance Constable Detritus had one on the end of each of his arms. Closer, as it were, to hand. I'll go and get the master, then, shall I? He said. Carrot leaned down. Thank you for your cooperation, he said gravely. How are people feeling? It's about 8:55 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're on page 58. Farmhouse thinks maybe we're done for the night. We do have things to do, yeah. Well, I'll be back here next Wednesday, barring any emergencies or anything of the sort. Yeah, other than the one joke. There was one joke in this bit that I am not a fan of. This book was written in 1993, but still, it's not tasteful. But other than that, I do thoroughly enjoy this. So, look forward to meeting that dog next Wednesday, who I think we will all thoroughly enjoy as well. What does everyone think of the book so far? Still great. Yes, I am. Is that what we're going back to? I think we agreed it was brush. Imagine being called to a meeting and being told that as of now, you're going to be receiving, to the effect of $7 million a year. And of course, this is in Ankh-Morpork, where he was making, like $38 a month? So that $7 million is probably actually quite a bit more than that by our standards. I would guess it's probably more like 500 million or something like that. Yeah, this one is going more into, I think, the plot quicker than Guards did. An unfathomable amount of income for you. I can definitely understand the bit about Vimes finishing the meeting on automatic. Yeah, that makes sense, Sharkies. Richest person in the city. Yeah, probably one of... I was going to say one of the richest in the world, not accounting for whichever country Two Flower came from. Because for some reason, everyone in that kingdom was fabulously wealthy. So far, this story is definitely starting off in a very mysterious fashion. It would solve a lot of problems. Yeah. We've had 2 dragon explosions so far. Poor things. We have re-met Lady Sybil and Nobby. And more properly met Cuddy and Detritus. You do still love Sybil Ramkin. Just Vimes, captain of the guard, in his 40s, about to become one of the richest people in the world, and she's holding a handkerchief up to his mouth and being like, spit, and then rubbing some smudge off of his cheek. She's so straightforward and practical. Yeah. Except for when it comes to dragons. Well, she's still somewhat straightforward and practical when it comes to dragons. Somewhat. But I guess you could say less so than with everything else. That bit in Guards when she charges the palace guards with like a axe or whatever, a sword. I think it was a sword. What was it like? Her bosom rose and fell like an empire. I also love the bit of like the thief here and now. They're just like they give him the keys. Go lock yourself up. Take the keys in with you. We'll holler if we need them. In and out of jail so frequently that they trust him to handle the procedures himself. Protective custody, right? That makes sense, yeah, from the Thieves Guild. Well, this was fun. I'm glad to be back reading again. So I'm going to have a busy weekend. Going out tomorrow to visit some family and hoping that the people looking at my house on Sunday want to buy the place. That'd be really nice. Cross your fingers for me, please. And lots of cleaning before then so that it looks like a place that you would really want to buy. The upside is cross your fingers, knock on wood. Our deck, which had been torn down, is now in the process of being replaced. So you can't yet go out onto the deck. You can look out and see what it's going to look like. And there's some others in the strata that look much more finished, that actually have railings up and such. So you can see that they're not going to, they'll probably be done before the year's over, which I think is going to be a positive thing. And it's a nice neighborhood, so maybe it'll be a family with kids who will appreciate having an elementary school nearby or something like that. All right, well, I hope you all have a very lovely weekend. Thanks all for showing up again. Kuro Neko Akuma, it's good to see you again. And I'm gonna start a raid out to Slightly Stupid Bear, who's playing Deep Rock Galactic right now. So, please go along and say hi to him. I'm sure he would appreciate it. And yeah, everyone have a good night. Happy Friday. Have a good weekend. And hopefully I'll see you next Wednesday. Yeah. So yeah, wish me luck with the weekend. And have a good night, everyone. I'm gonna start the raid. Bye!